and salutations. This is the Arcade Castle Podcast. The podcast looks at board games, video games, and those things I got a little bit of both. I've decided to take the unboxing for today out here into the western lawn of the Arcade Castle to take a look at the Super Mario World board game I just got in the mail. Now, this is not the first Super Mario World board game I've gotten, and probably not the last. One of the interesting things about most adaptions or licenses of video games is generally I don't know that they exist until I see them up for the auction block. And so I saw this one on eBay, decided to get it. Free shipping, downside of that, took a month and a half to get here. So I'm going to open it up today and see what it's all about. So, without further ado, let us take a look at the Super Mario World board game made by Party Joy and Bandai. And the first thing I noticed right away is that this game was made in 1990. Now, the pictures of this game online weren't that clear. And so I was kind of taking a hunch. I knew I didn't have it, but I didn't really know what it came with or any information about it other than a few faraway kind of blurry pictures. But I do notice, at least on the front and the back, it says it's made in 1990. Now, if I recall correctly, Super Mario World was released in the United States at least in November 21st, 1991, and it came out the previous year in Japan. I don't remember the exact date, or around the holidays. And so it's interesting to see that this adaptation was there when the game came out. This is probably the earliest adaptation of Super Mario World I'm probably going to find. Maybe not, but you never know. And so as you can see, it's got a lot of the imagery from the Famicom cartridge cover and box, at least for the Japanese one, Super Mario World. You still had Super Mario with the Yoshi on it, but the United States cartridge looks a little bit different than this. This is pretty close to what the Super Famicom cartridge looked like. And if we look at the back, you see a bunch of different tokens with arrows on them and a grid board. So if I had to guess, this might be some sort of, well, not chess, but you get the idea, to where, maybe even like Summoner Wars, to where each player is moving around the board and they can only move in certain prescribed ways, as well as the enemies can only move in certain prescribed ways as well. And it prescribes probably about 20 of them. So let's take a look inside and see what we get. Aha, there we go. And put you there. And okay, we got cards, we got tokens, a nicely colored instruction book. I don't know. I like the colors of that. Sort of muted reds and muted greens. Sort of in the same palette as Super Mario, but I guess with a limited printer ink, and a couple awesome dice, and a board. So we'll look at the board real quick, and then I'll go into closer detail with each of the components in turn. And here we'll take a closer look at the board, and if you look here, you start, not unlike the video game, here in World 1, and then you proceed at a very stately pace, it looks like, throughout the rest of the world. Now, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of secret areas or multiple paths towards the end goal, which I presume is all the way to World 8 and Bowser. For example, you don't have the various ways, you don't have the Ghost House boss here, you don't have a top secret area that I can tell. There's the item block. No Soda Lake that I can tell. And most importantly, no Star Road that you can shortcut through various ways throughout the board. And that's one thing I've always thought would be kind of interesting for any Mario game, is to make it more modular and have the player's ability to go to different areas in whatever order they see fit. And so that would introduce various strategies on, how you would proceed throughout this board. Instead of just like this, if there were multiple ways to get through this board, using secret passageways and things like that, it gives the player more power to do what they want to do, gives them more choices and replayability, and also to develop strategies as well. Now let us take a look at one of the main components of the game, which are the 20 pucks, as advertised on the back of the box. And as you can see here, they are a number of pucks for the basic enemies, and then you have one for Bowser, the Koopa Kids, and 4 player pawns for Super Mario. And as you can see, for each of them, they each have a number of arrows, which in all likelihood designates what type of movements they can make on the grid-based board. And also, if you look at them, you'll see a numeric value next to their pictures as well. And if I had to guess, that's probably where these pretty psychedelic dice come into play, to where you roll the dice for your own movement and a creature movement, and that one of the numbers indicates which creatures move, or you have the choice to move one that has that number, like there's 2 or 3 number 3s, and you can move any one of your choice. But what is actually kind of interesting about the player pawns is that the board game also comes with a number of cardboard discs for the 4-player pawns. And as you can see, you can upgrade your Super Mario to a Yoshi with a cape, or simply just a cape. And I imagine you can get these or lose these throughout the game. And so that's actually kind of cool, is that you can also have one for Yoshi. Okay. So that's kind of interesting to see a piece like this that's upgradable and modular. So that's going to at least give you a little more variety in the game, giving you power-ups, which of course that's one of the big things about Super Mario is power-ups. And so yeah, we'll take actually a look at the cards that would give you those power-ups. And so this is the other main component of the game. These are the cards that you get when you, in all likelihood, land on a question mark space. These are probably doled out at random, one on each space versus a deck, and then whenever you land on that space, you get to draw the card. And most of these, as you can see, seem to be pretty self-explanatory, pretty straightforward. You have the feathers, you have the flowers, whenever you get a Yoshi, whenever you get a mushroom, whenever you get a 1-up. And if I had to guess on this one right here, this one is probably whenever you draw it, you have to roll again. It's pretty awesome, psychedelic dice. And if you get a 1 or a 2, you take damage. But these two are a little more confusing in that I don't know what they are immediately. They aren't immediately apparent on what they are. And this one, the only thing I can guess is if that there are multiple pipe locations, maybe you can transport your player to any one that you choose on the board. And this one is a little confusing as well, simply because this at least indicates that you get the feather power-up, that you get a cape. So I'm not sure what this card indicates. Maybe if you have the cape, you can fly from one location to another location. Not really sure on that. And I was kind of want to give you a nice close-up of these pretty awesome dice. They're super shiny. I like them a lot. Probably my favorite component in this game, short of the pucks over there. And yeah, that is the other main, if it'll come into focus. There, yes. There, we'll go with that. And this is the other main component of the game. You have the pucks and the cards. So I'll set it up. Looks like the back of the board has a indicated setup of how you set up the game, and I'm sure the instructions say it as well. So we'll have a setup of the game so you can take a quick look at it and see how the game at least starts. And here we have the startup of the board, the layout for starting the game as indicated in the instruction manual over there. And there are a couple of things I got right and a couple of things I got wrong, at least in my initial impressions on how this game is set up. The question mark blocks are shuffled into a deck versus being sprinkled around the board. However, as you can see with the pucks, they have starting locations on the board. For example, if we move Wendy, it indicates where Wendy starts. And as you can see with Wendy, she has all the arrows which indicate her movement along the prescribed path that players will take when traversing the board to defeat Bowser and rescue the princess. And I imagine, as you can see, the number 4, so perhaps whenever the red dice is rolled, that moves the enemies, and the white dice moves the players, perhaps. And another thing I didn't notice when I first looked at the front of the board a few minutes ago is that you have all of the basic enemies. Actually, they're just by plastic. All the basic enemies on the board. I forget what these are called, but Bullet Bill, the dinosaurs, there's a Goomba up there. They're just already on the board. And so I imagine that perhaps whenever you defeat these, they're gone, but every player has to get through these. And so that might hinder players' progress and also spread the players out versus it being a giant stampede from the start to the finish. And yeah, that is at least my initial impression on how the game is played. I imagine players progress throughout the board, getting power-ups, rolling dice, moving enemies, and moving their own pawns, and probably trying to put obstacles in the way of the other players in the form of enemies, while trying to free up their own path. Because as you can see well actually no. You can see the red lines. I was going to say there was grids, like a 9x9 grids throughout the board where you have a little more play. But I might be wrong on that one. At least here with the football player, as you can see, you have 4 spaces he can move around in, and that perhaps you have the freedom to move around in as well. But yeah, those are just a couple of things I got off the initial impression here. You do have the power-ups. You don't have to worry about the question mark blocks like up here or over there or over there. There really aren't any secret passages that I can tell. And of course you don't have the Star Road. But beyond that, and I guess you don't have any like sub-levels. Like you don't whenever you go here, there's not like a separate board for a castle that you have to get through as well. Nothing like that. Just the main world. One thing that's kind of interesting, I've always liked the fact that this implies that this is the whole world for Super Mario World, so I don't know if it's just simply one of the many worlds in Super Mario Galaxy, and so then you could have a bigger narrative with Super Mario to where each of the games is simply one of those worlds that are in Super Mario Galaxy, and that Bowser's trying to conquer the universe, which sounds a little more exciting than simply conquering a neighboring kingdom and kidnapping their royalty. Yeah. Princess Peach. Bowser. Rawr! And that is the Super Mario World board game, at least the earliest attempt that I've came across at present. Now, there are other Super Mario World board games, but this one's probably the earliest one, with a publishing date of 1990. And the United States didn't even get this until 1991, as I said. And so, it'll be kind of interesting to play this and compare it to the other ones that came out in subsequent years to see if public reception of Super Mario World, both over in Japan and probably to a lesser degree over in the United States, to see what the audience liked, what they didn't like about the video game, and to see whether or not that's actually reflected in the gameplay of these other Super Mario World adaptations. Which, of course, will be one of the points of our analysis in the podcast when we do the Super Mario World board game or board games. And so, without further ado, thank you for watching the unboxing of the Super Mario World board game from